How to survive a zombie apocalypse. Stock supplies. Stay close to home. Whatever you do, don't go to Walmart. I'm ready. Hey everyone, I'm Roxanne and welcome to the review and analysis. It's kind of like a quasi-English lit, except it's not boring, it's lit. Today we're not just looking at one movie, we're going to be looking at the genre of the zombie apocalypse. Now the first thing about a zombie apocalypse is you're going to ask, what type of zombie are we looking at? Is it the George A. Romero zombies that are the undead, slow-moving, moaning type that you can outrun and have some kind of chance to survive? Or is it the 28 day later rabid zombies? The kind you know that if this was real, yeah, there's no hope. You're either going to be eaten or you're going to become a zombie yourself. I'd personally take the latter choice because, at least I'd be alive. Now, not to say George A. Romero zombies didn't leave their mark in the whole zombie apocalypse genre. They basically defined it, and filmmakers started making their own breed of zombies from there. But I'm looking at the rabid, fast-paced 28 day later zombies. We're particularly going to be looking at Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later, I Am Legend starring Will Smith, and World War Z starring Brad Pitt. I particularly like this variety of zombie apocalypse because there's some kind of premise that makes this even remotely possible. And that's the premise of a virus, an epidemic of some kind that takes normal, presumably civilized human beings and turns them into rabid, ravenous, bloodthirsty cannibals. Now, quite frankly, I don't watch horror movies anymore as a rule of thumb. They're just too scary. But there are some deeper philosophical themes that the zombie apocalypse always inevitably touches on. That is, if civilization as we know it ceased to exist, the infrastructures, the rule of law, the authority or government structures, and necessities like hospitals and Walmart ceased to exist, how would we survive? And there's also the question of humanity. What makes a human being a human being? What makes someone worth saving? Where does our intrinsic value lie? And if your best friend or your mother got bitten, would you wait for them to change first, then shoot them? Or just be like, I'm sorry, the minute you change, you're gonna eat me, so I'll never forget you? That's the thing with a zombie apocalypse. It's always really starting with some kind of wager about who is gonna be alive by the end of the film. Who is tough enough to beat the odds? Who, when it comes down to it, is going to be able to pull that trigger on their best friend that just got bitten. Now, with the George A. Romero zombies, that would make the choice a lot easier because there's some lag time between when a person dies and then comes back as a zombie. But with a 28 day later zombie, there is no death. This person is still a living, breathing human being, and the transition time is like a split second. Now, I've heard theories that the zombie apocalypse really represents rabid consumerism, and a mass of fast-paced 28 day later zombies is comparable to a Target on Black Friday. I mean, I guess I can see some of that, but two main themes I always see coming through is what is the intrinsic worth of a human being and how great are your survival skills when social structures and amenities are no longer available. Another theme is the question of morality and ethics. When the structures of civilization as we know it are taken away and your very survival is at stake, will you still do the right thing? When there's no police, no rule of law, and there's no systematic consequences for doing the wrong thing, will you still hold on to your morality and sense of right and wrong? In a way, there may not be immediate consequences for abandoning your ethics and values, but what you see tend to happen in these kind of movies is by the time the character has killed, robbed, stolen, and lied just to be able to survive their circumstances, they start to become a shell of a person. You can see them becoming more and more jaded, and they get this hollow look in their eyes. I think that's because a big part of who we are as human beings is our morality. It's really our humanity. It's the essence of what makes us human versus soulless savages, which is what the zombies kind of represent, don't they? The reason you look at a zombie as separate from a human being saying is these are just eating machines. They have no morality, no sense of right and wrong driving them. All that drives them is a ravenous, savage hunger. There's no soul in those eyes, right? And for the survivors of a zombie apocalypse, who really is a survivor? Because by the time they've done some ethically questionable things to survive their circumstances, are they still human? Or has each time they've compromised their morality to live, have they also chipped away at their own humanity? One particular character I like to look at is Selena, played by Naomi Harris in 28 Days Later. Now, by the time Jim meets up with Selena, she's been holding her own for some time, but Selena is traumatized. She's a shell of a person. This epidemic is supposed to have unfolded in only 28 days, but however long it took, she's seen enough and had to do enough to become emotionally numb. It's just about survival for her, and that's all she has. You can tell she's lost so much, she doesn't even want to become emotionally attached to Jim, because in case he's infected, she'll have to kill him. And like she says, she won't even have to think about it. She'll do it in a heartbeat. Now, the emotional numbing we see in characters like Selena, or even Will Smith's character Robert Neville in I Am Legend, is the kind of thing most people experience when suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. A person experiences trauma again and again to the point where the brain kind of turns off its emotional switch in order to cope. The result is you lose your capacity to feel, which is a temporary type of fix, but you really can't live the rest of your life that way healthily when it's our ability to feel that allows us to form emotional bonds and relationships. Another theme that the zombie apocalypse genre tends to explore is a theme of isolation. It might be like 28 Days Later, where the character wakes up and they're only seeing the aftermath of the epidemic. You know, the city has been evacuated, people are dead, and you're just walking around for miles wondering what happened. I think the beginning of the first season of Walking Dead kind of uses this format too, of this lonely, bewildered character who has no clue what's happened and is wandering around in a hospital gown. It's kind of almost this paradox where you want human company, you want to see some living, breathing person, but when you do, you better run for your life because that's a zombie. Neville's character goes through that to an extreme though, because he's been alone so long, he actually starts talking to non-living objects like the mannequins. And even though that scene is funny with him and Sam in the car, and he's like, listen, if you plan something for my birthday, you better just tell me because I hate surprises. It's funny, but also horribly sad at the same time. By the time Anna's character shows up, you can see Neville has some strange behaviors and characteristics because he's been alone too long. Isn't that just the irony about humanity? When we're too close together, there's disease and death, but when we're isolated, it's almost worse. When Jim comes across Selena's character, he's not isolated anymore physically, but he is still isolated emotionally because Selena's character is just in survival mode. She doesn't smile, she doesn't laugh or cry, and you better not get bit because she's coming for you. So by the time Frank and Hannah's characters show up, they are like a breath of fresh air. Frank, for some reason, isn't jaded. This character has some warmth to him, and it's probably because of his daughter Hannah. He has hope, he's still sociable, he has emotional vulnerability, he's not hardened like Selena. He kind of makes the audience go, everything's gonna be alright. And that's probably what makes his death later all the more tragic. He was that last bit of humanity left in the movie, amid all the cold isolation and death we're seeing. I know I was sticking with the fast-paced zombie genre, but just to dip into the Walking Dead first season a bit, there was a similar loss we experienced with Dale. He's warm, he has a moral compass, he hasn't been jaded by the carnage around him, and he still encourages the other survivors to do the right thing, even when the wrong moral action might be the easier choice.
We can't call witnesses, go before a judge.
Oh, so he's automatically guilty by association and sentenced to death? He's just a kid.
I know when Dale died, the entire Walking Dead viewership was like, what we gonna do? Hold me! Just interesting to note, I think the Walking Dead zombies are a nice blend of the George A. Romero zombies and the 28 Day Later fast-paced zombies. It's still caused by some kind of virus or biological agent, but the characters still die when bitten. I think I'll call this the hybrid. Anyway, the final theme I'm gonna look at is the if you can't beat 'em, join 'em theme. And for this one, I'm gonna dip into World War Z. So Brad Pitt has discovered that the way to get the zombies to stop following you is to become infected. Infected with what? Not the zombie virus, but some terminal illness. The zombies can somehow pick up in your scent that will make you a complete turnoff. An ode to zombie, if you will, or more like a zombie repellent. The theme of the zombie repellent has been explored in The Walking Dead, where Michonne is basically walking around with two zombies she's D2 so that the scent of the zombies repel the other zombies. I think one character at some point smears himself with zombie guts so the zombies would think he was a zombie. And of course you have Shaun of the Dead Dead, where just walking around and moaning like a zombie fools the other zombies. That theoretically shouldn't work, but whatever. In the if you can't beat 'em, join 'em theme, you kind of wonder if there's some amount of Stockholm Syndrome involved in that method. Maybe it's not to the point where zombie apocalypse survivors start relating to or sympathizing with the zombies, but maybe it's a case where you're so outnumbered and the zombies clearly have the upper hand that you would want to be a zombie just so that you're not the hunted anymore, you're the hunter and in the position of power. Anyway, that's it for the review and analysis. I hope you enjoyed my look at the zombie apocalypse genre and themes. Be sure to leave a comment, and if you enjoyed, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more content like this, please hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one. Laters.